Hey there everyone, it is Poober here, kicking off episode 11 of my Season 2 Factorio playthrough. Now in episode 10 we finally tapped into some crude oil, so today I'm hoping that we can finally work on processing that oil. So our first order of business in today's episode is to do something that a lot of you recommended in the comments of the last episode, and that is to change out my wagons here for our train. And the reason for that is that I've been using just regular cargo wagons for our train, bringing our oil barrels to and from this station here, and that's really not necessary at this point in the game, or really at any point in the game with crude oil. It's one thing if we were trying to barrel and process other fluids and take those to and fro, but we don't need to do it with crude oil at this point. So I've already emptied everything from this wagon here, and we're going to replace it with a fluid wagon. And I don't want to replace this one with a fluid wagon yet because it's still full of all of these crude oil barrels. So once we get rid of that and processed, then we'll change out this one as well. So with that order of business done, now we can proceed with the next plan, which is to get some advanced or even just some basic oil processing at this point, where it's still a little early for advanced oil processing. But my plan for that is to put in a blueprint for our oil processing in the, whoops, we're a little too far, in this section over here. And it will just be a temporary thing. We're going to definitely upgrade it in the future. The point being, we're going to have the correct basic ratios for our oil processing for early game in this section here, and it's going to be bussed in via train, and that will have fluid wagons connected to those trains. And then that way we can start to add on to our bus, get some more products over here, and then kind of gradually move our starter base, which is this section over here, into our big section over here. So I'll head over that way and see you guys in just a second once we have that blueprint down. So I just placed my fluid processing blueprint, and now all I need to do is put in the components as soon as I have all of them available. At this point, I don't have all of the chemical plants, but I do have some to at least get us started. But this is a blueprint that I did create off camera in a test world, and I actually haven't tested it out yet, so the first time testing it out will be today when we get it going live. But it should theoretically produce batteries over here to the left, plastic here in the middle. We'll also produce explosives over here to the right. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and fill in what I can, and I'll see you guys once that's done. And da-da-da-da, here it is, you guys, in all of its mostly finished glory. We're still missing a couple components like the substation here, a couple poles for electricity, this roboport, and then mostly just some underground belts and things like that to get items to and fro. So let me talk about how this works real quick before we go ahead and turn it on. These lines here are obviously going to be feeding or be fed from our main bus that will be filled in eventually. For now, for the purpose of testing it, I'm going to be putting in some items into this box here to feed our belt line for now. The reason why we have our batteries kind of having this blue triangle in the middle is because we are missing some modules that will be going into those. So eventually, everything that can be moduled will be. And so this will stay blue until the modules are placed. But the plastic is good to go, even though we don't have modules in that for now. And then this, of course, will be the explosives like I talked about earlier. I cannot put the recipe in for that at this point because I don't have that researched, but that will be on its way. Here we will have barreling of our lube and our sulfuric acid, and these items as well will get barreled onto our main bus line so that other factories in the future can feed from those barrels. These three, again, will be for our flamethrower ammo. These two chemical plants are for the lube, and then the remainder of the chemical plants over here that you do not see recipes in are going to be for advanced cracking. So these will be the correct ratio for cracking our light into petroleum and then our heavy oil into light oil. I believe that will be this one over here. So it should be in total 8 of the refineries, 7 of the light into petroleum, and then 1 chemical plant again just for heavy into light. So we also have our train stations up here, and putting everything in, including these train stations, took a lot longer than I originally expected, but I'm hoping it'll pay off in the end. So this one here will be for our drop-off of our crude oil, and then this one here at the top will be for drop-off of our water. The reason why we have a water drop-off station is because we don't have any water nearby, and of course we will need water once we get advanced oil processing ready to go. So unfortunately it will have to be bussed in and dropped off into the tanks here. So this tank and light setup that you see here is one that I implemented in my previous map, so if you are unfamiliar with that, you can go check it out on my map tour. But these will light up green when we have fluid coming into the barrels, or the tanks rather, and then they will turn red when we don't have any fluid coming in. And that way you can look at a glance and just see if we're having the appropriate amount of our fluid coming in. So I think that sums it up in a nutshell here. I do want to make sure I don't have any miscellaneous concerns over our pipes. I think this one here is going to be an issue because this should just be for water. I'm pretty sure. I'll just leave it at that for now. So we also need to just kind of put in an assembler here, and the reason for that is because our crude oil is still only in these barrels. So we'll just do a temporary assembler that will unload the barrels into our pipes here. So let's go ahead and do that now. We can just put that right here. We'll have it directly feed into our line. Let's put in our recipe. Then of course we will need a box for our empty barrels once they become empty. And we'll actually just rotate that just so I don't get that pipe mixed up. There we go. We gave it power. Now let's just bring our barrels to it. And once the barrels reach the assembler, it should start working and everything should be turned on. So it'll just be a matter of making sure everything gets to where it needs to go. You can tell it's turning on because we finally have fire coming out of the refinery here, so that's 3 working. Let's see if we can make it to all 8 or close to it. So there's 5. And we may not get to the 8 all at one time just because of a throughput fluid issue. That will get solved once we have the fluid wagons unloading and then more input from the different tanks and things like that. But it looks like I've seen all of the refineries come on at some point, even though not at the same time, and we don't have any mix-up of our fluids so far, so that's good. Let's go ahead and take a look at everything else now. So with the basic oil processing, unfortunately you only get the one product, which is petroleum, but you can see it is working. So the petroleum is getting fed, and this is kind of the choke point where we have this one pump here that will not let it pass unless there is greater than or equal to 8 plastic that will be read on one of these belts over here. So unfortunately, we won't have any of our product get past kind of this point here. Again, it's being stuck at this point behind the pump. So I'm going to go ahead and bypass the system for now. We'll just add in a couple more pipes. And then once we get our oil processing finished and cracking done, actually I don't need to, I can make these underground. But once we get the rest of the cracking researched and available to us, we can get rid of these extra pipes here. So that means our pipe for petroleum needs to hook back up into here, I think. Pretty sure. I'm making kind of a weird configuration because I want to make sure I don't accidentally mix the fluids there. Okay, so I'm just hovering over the pipes to make sure that they do have petroleum, which is the product we're kind of looking for, and it is. So that's good. What about the other side? All right. So our plastic now has petroleum. These have petroleum. Awesome. And I'm stuck. Okay. All right, so let's turn on the rest of the factory. Let's put in a couple stacks of everything. We'll do, let's see, we'll make this one iron, this one will be copper, and then we need a box for coal, which we have here. And I'm just doing these boxes to supply the products for now because our belt isn't installed, but once we get a main bus, we will no longer need those boxes. And then this one is steel. We can put that, oh, I'm already planning ahead. That will go there. And the steel we only have going on half of the belt line because ideally the steel will make it to the assembler here. I do need to fix that line though, it looks like. There we go. So the steel will feed it into this assembler to make our empty barrels. And then I have two outputs for the empty barrels. This line here to feed into our lube, and then this belt line that goes underground to feed into our sulfuric acid assembler over here. I couldn't quite coordinate fitting in the belts like I would have liked, so that's why we have kind of like a superfluous output for our barrels. So let me actually hook this back up into a regular belt there. It shouldn't have been an underground belt to begin with. So now this one can get the barrels it needs. And I will eventually put some smarts on these inserters like we have at the other train station near our starter base. And that will prevent overproduction of our barrels, but for now I'm okay with it kind of running. Alright, but now that we've added in our products, let's check out our plastic, which is already full. That is so cool. Okay, great. And then what about batteries? We don't have batteries yet. Why do we not have batteries yet? Because we don't have water. All right. Well, I think I'm going to go ahead and set up a water train station so I can get batteries started. And I'll just do that off camera. But in the meantime, we at least have plastic production. So let's go ahead and kind of swoop up a couple stacks of plastic if possible. Let's put in the remainder of our coal. And then for plastic, we can now use that to make our red circuits. And then our red circuits will go, of course, into making our Science Pack 3s, which will then be needed for making more research for things we need, like our advanced oil processing. At this point, I've done all of the research I possibly can with just red and green. I haven't made any factories for our military science or the blue science yet. So that will be in future episodes, but for now I think we're going to have to call it here. Thanks for joining me for episode 11, you guys, and I hope you'll stick around for episode 12.